Thank you very much, colleagues in academia, University Chancellor, Brother Raymond Tan, and our students in the back of the room. It's my pleasure to be here this morning to give a keynote talk which delves into 21st century business research. So if we go to the cover slide, research trends in the digital economy in tune with the theme of the conference this year. And what I intend to do over the next few minutes is to perhaps try to spark some new ideas and new mindsets among the participants who are present today. So next slide, please. First of all, I want to say that as an institution, many decades ago, we actually started our journey towards becoming a research university. It has not been very smooth. Actually, looking back, we had many aches and pains, but we committed to pouring in energy and resources towards this transition. And I do think that we've come a long way. And the next part of our duty, of course, is to help other institutions progress in research as well. Among the resources, of course, and opportunities that we're happy to share is the highly successful DLSU Business and Economics Review. It's an open access Scopus Index Journal with global visibility, and we would encourage, of course, many of the participants in this room to, in the near future, submit your work for possible publication in this journal. Next slide, please. All right, I want to start with this quote from Elon Musk, one of the icons of the modern era of business, who spoke of mindsets as defining the foundations of innovation. I think we can start with this because the theme of my talk really is about changing business research to respond to changing business conditions in the real world. And because we represent educational institutions, it's incumbent upon us to really not just teach the needs of the present, but to think ahead so that when our students leave our universities, they're actually prepared and the apt phrase future-proof is something we've been using lately. They will be able to respond to future needs of their careers. So next slide, please. Okay, these are the four main areas that I want to talk about. Number one is the digital economy. So next slide, please. The next one. Okay, I want to talk briefly about modern business. And if you're old enough, if you're not a student, and you think back 10 or 15 years ago, I think you realize so many things have changed in the way products and services are delivered to consumers. For example, travel agencies are just about obsolete because nowadays people book their hotels and flights mostly online, and they're able to get great bargains doing so. Likewise, nowadays we have virtual hotels courtesy of Airbnb. So if you have a condo which is vacant for a few months every year, you can actually make some money out of it by using it as a virtual hotel. If you use social media like Facebook or YouTube, I'm sure you realize now, advertising has changed. A lot of advertising is actually targeted and tailor-fit to the viewer, so that somehow companies are actually able to keep track of not your declared preferences, but your actual preferences based on the videos that you watch and the ads that you click. And as such, perhaps the way we teach advertising in business schools needs to be reshaped, because it's no longer just broadcasting, but it's actually tailor-made advertising, which is now possible through modern technology. So these are some of the changes which technology enables within the business environment. And of course, the other thing to think about is technology can also fail. A good case in point is Uber. I'm sure a lot of us are rather frustrated with the failure of Uber, but it's happened not just in the Philippines, but in other countries as well, where the technology was there. There seemed to be a reasonable business model to run the technology as a commercial product, but it turns out there were regulatory barriers. The laws in many countries actually, in effect, was a barrier that was, you might say, behind the times, preventing the penetration of Uber as a legal means of transportation. So what that points out is There are technological solutions. Sadly, most engineers and technologists like myself obviously are not good at turning these gadgets, innovations, into actual products, which is why we need people with a business mindset to know the ecosystem and figure out how to turn inventions into actual products and services. So that is the challenge that I pose to the audience today. Next slide, please. In terms of scholarly influence, I did this search earlier this week. It turns out the most highly influential and most highly cited article in business this decade was published in 2012. You can see it on the screen, and it actually spoke about how business analytics is going to change business research in the coming years. This was published in 2012, and as I mentioned, a lot of the innovations that we've seen and we actually use ourselves have come within the years after the publication of this article. So the other thing to try to imagine is if so much changed in the past decade, can you imagine what sort of changes might actually be facing us in the next 10 years? The job of researchers, whether in the tech disciplines or the business disciplines, is to be able to imagine and create those futures. Next slide, please. Now, looking at the national perspective, it's interesting to note the overlap. And I'm not sure if it was intentional, but that's right. It's certainly great that there's an overlap between the theme of the conference today and national initiatives. So for instance, you can download this policy brief from the Department of Trade and Industry, where the Inclusive Innovation Strategy actually pinpoints e-business as one of the 12 priority areas for the Philippines. And this is in an era where we see perhaps the emerging of the initial stages of our transition from what we traditionally think of as a poor country to at least a middle-income economy in the coming generation. This is happening. Of course, there are still problems with equity, but the signs of growth are there, like it around the traffic and the construction boom that you see in so many cities in the Philippines, actually are signs of the initial stages of growth. Okay, next slide, please. Now, the next part I want to talk about is research and innovation. So if we move to the next slide, this is the Philippines' most recent ranking in the Global Innovation Index. And of course, we haven't really moved that much. We're sort of, as a country, we're in the middle of the pack. But it actually is very instructive, not just to look at where we rank versus, for example, Vietnam or Malaysia, but we look at the detailed scorecard. There's a one-page PDF file where we can see subcategories in which the Philippines happens to be either especially strong or especially weak. So one of the weak areas in which we lag behind our average ranking is the area of human capital and research. I would point out that it's interesting to note that in the Global Innovation Index, human capital and research are tied together. And I think what we need to realize is that the process of research is both about creating new knowledge that becomes the products of the future, innovations in the future, but part of the research process is the educational process. We create the workforce of the future and ensure that they understand that knowledge is not something to be passively absorbed, but knowledge is actually a dynamic entity that they can contribute to through their own work, whether it's a master's or PhD thesis or undergraduate research work. So it's essential because when our students eventually become professionals and they work in industry, the innovativeness of the companies that they form or that they join later in their careers will depend as much on the skills that they gain during their education. And they must understand that knowledge is something that they can help produce rather than just absorb from some first world source. So that's the challenge for higher education in the Philippines. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the role of research, here's a simplified diagram of the interaction between researchers, government, industry, and the general public at large. And the arrows basically speak of the interactions in terms of receiving government support to help fund research. For example, from CHED, from USD. I would, for example, point out Dr. Sariel is leading a project called Philippine Innovation Entrepreneurship Corps, which is intended to turn DLSU-funded projects into commercial products. And I think to the tune of several million per year, DLSU is funding the training of both the inventors and the business people who work together in small teams to take the technologies to market. Now, of course, the beneficiaries of the research that is generated would include the general public, the government itself, and industry, who might be the eventual entities that turn these knowledge goods into products. And I would summarize this diagram very succinctly as essentially we have funds, we have money from the government and other funding sources. The job of universities and researchers specifically is to turn the money into knowledge. Once you have the knowledge, then the second part of the job is to turn the knowledge back into money. Hopefully more money than you put in the first place. That has been the engine that drove the development of first world countries, and obviously we're trying to replicate it here in the Philippines as well. Next slide, please. All right, I won't go into details for this slide. Basically, there is a national R&D agenda which has been developed by the Department of Science and Technology, and they actually pinpoint specific technologies, including digital technologies, as priority areas for funding. One of the things that we find troubling in the SNT disciplines is we're not of the mindset of actually turning these technologies into businesses. But the USD is demanding from us that there should be more and more push towards commercialization. This is why we think that rather than having the techies working in isolation and the business researchers working in isolation, part of my point this morning is that there should be collaboration between these two groups so that we actually come up with much better research than we would do individually. Next slide, please. Okay, that's the global and national ecosystem, as it were. Now, the third part of my talk deals with what that implies for our work in academia. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. These are the three major purposes of working in academia. Number one is we transmit knowledge, because our students need to have at least a minimum set of skills and knowledge by which they become professionals and educated citizens. But it goes well beyond that. That's why it's called higher education. We must create new knowledge, because without the new knowledge being created, then each generation will just know exactly as much as the previous ones. And we don't want that. We want progress by creating new knowledge. And finally, we want social engagement. All universities have an implicit social contract with society that they must contribute to the growth and development and quality of life. And that is done generally through what we call social and community engagement, which comes in various forms, including knowledge transfer and the provision of expertise. And it's quite generic, it applies to the Philippines and anywhere in the world. Next slide, please. And we may think in at least four broad ways why we do research in academia. I mentioned that the actual knowledge we produce can be a social good, because we create solutions to problems. For example, we cure diseases with inventions. In addition to that, of course, the educational aspect of ensuring that we build up knowledge capital along with human capital for the Philippines and beyond. That we need an educated workforce with the outlook of the capability to engage in the knowledge economy. And of course, there is the more cynical aspect of bragging rights and institutional prestige, which all comes as part of the package, which is also essential for our alumni, because they, of course, depend on us to ensure that their diplomas remain valuable throughout their lives. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to shift gears a bit and show a bit of bad news with the intent of lighting a fire in your bellies. What I've done is checked well, I looked at the rankings of some of the best business schools throughout the world, and then I picked out those which are in Asia. It turns out a large number of them are in a small city-state called Hong Kong. One of them is another city-state called Singapore, a couple in China, one in Korea. And these are the top 8 business schools in Asia. In the third column, you actually see the number of cumulative publications as drawn from a database called Scopus. And sadly, at the bottom there's a footnote. If you can see that the cumulative output of the Philippines, with our approximately 2,000 colleges and universities, doesn't even compare to a fraction of the output of one of these institutions. And this is in the field of business. That excludes STEM disciplines, that excludes non-business related disciplines. So I think there is plenty of room for growth. Rather than seeing this as an insurmountable mountain, I think it's important for us to imagine it as room for growth in the future. And we hope that conferences like this will provide a seed for increasing productivity rates in the coming years. Next slide, please. And the reason for that is, of course, it speaks of the state of higher education in the Philippines. As it stands, if you look at major ranking institutions, for instance, if you look at Times Higher Education, only 2 universities in the Philippines are listed in the World University Rankings. If you look at the QS World Rankings, there are 4 universities, including us, University of the Philippines, as a system. Ateneo de Manila University and UST have been ranked for more than a decade now. But there is a bit of good news, because now we see that 8 universities in this country appear in the QS Asian University Rankings. It would be sad if it's just been those big 4 that keep appearing, so now the list is expanded. It's important to note also that the other universities entering, including Wood University, but 3 of those are actually outside of the NCR. And that is a good sign in terms of having equitable quality education being available in different regions in the country. And I do know, unofficially, there are Czech officials who've set targets of having more universities in this country, making that list in the future. And I think the more of those we have, the better it will mean for the local higher education landscape. But what that means also is more work for those people who work in academia, like us. So if we move to the next slide, please. Some concluding thoughts, and I would especially like to end with some suggestions on how we can improve productivity based on my own experience over the past 2 decades. Next slide, please. What does it mean for us? Firstly, if a university makes a decision to become a research-oriented university, that really cascades all the way through the entire organization. Support systems must make this adjustment. Individual employees must make this adjustment. If, for example, you're a faculty member, you're going to have to make adjustments in your working hours and make sure that you contribute to the research. And that's going to eat up hours and hours of your typical work week, in addition to the typical duties of marking exams and giving lectures. So it's not a matter of just making a declaration, which is something at DLSU we did that decades ago. We planted the seeds in the 1980s, but it took a good nearly half century for significant gains to be made. So it's not going to be an overnight solution, but it requires institutional and individual commitment. Next slide, please. All right, apologies to those who have heard me talk. Dr. Salle is smiling because she knows what I'm going to say. You work in higher education, you have to balance research, teaching, maybe you become director of research unit, and you have to be a manager as well within the organization. And then you have your personal life as well. And you have to do this all in 24 hours per day. So the formula is very simple. You can see it from this chart. 24 hours a day, you cut it in 4 ways. Then you devote 6 hours a day to each of those slices. And during your personal time, you go to sleep. That's the solution. Actually, what it means, I'm glad we're still getting laughs from my colleagues, but actually what that means, scales in the middle speak of a balancing act, and each one of us must make a decision as to, of course, how much of our personal energy we dedicate to those individual challenges and individual demands of our time. But it also needs to be done in the same way that we build up, say, a strong volleyball or basketball team. We need to balance those demands, both at the individual and at the organization level. Next slide, please. Now, how do we get better? These are some of the key points. It is essential that you get your research published. Presenting at a conference is good because it gives you an opportunity to present your ideas. But keep in mind, at a conference, you have a limited audience of maybe several dozen people. And of course, that's really very temporary because it's verbal and it's oral. What you need is the discipline of writing down your ideas so that they become accessible and discoverable in the future. Decades from now, people who want to hear or read your work should be able to access that through some permanent form of publication. The next point is, having trouble reading my own slides. What does that say? I'll step out of your discipline, sorry about that. Now what that means is, even though we traditionally have the comfort zone of working among business researchers, and likewise people in my discipline do that as well. I think the challenges of the day demand that we step out of our comfort zones and basically start working with people from other disciplines, which is what Dr. Sayal's project is trying to do, and we foresee some success in that area. It's also important to start working in discipline groups. Forming teams, but making sure that the teams remain focused on the outcomes. And, friendships are great, but friendships with productivity are even better. And in addition to this, I would encourage everyone in the room to make friends overseas, because the way business research and business education is done in the Philippines may be different from how it's done, for instance, in Malaysia or Singapore and Taiwan. It's always good to learn new things. In biology, scientists speak of hybrid vigor. If you have hybrid cows or dogs or chickens, they're much more robust, they're much healthier than pure breeds. And I think the same goes very much for research. We can come up with better research by working with colleagues from overseas and utilizing those networks. And essentially that increases research productivity and research quality as well. Next slide, please. So I come to my conclusion. The key point essentially is that the digital economy is here. Undoubtedly, I'm sure 90% of you in this room have used some digital products in recent years. So it's important to know that technologies are not going to be the same a decade from now. What we'd like to do is be part of the knowledge workforce that generates the next generation of technologies and technology-based businesses. Not just for the Philippines, not just for Asia, but for the entire world. It's a tall order, but it needs to be done by someone, and it would be good for more and more of it to be done in the Philippines through research and through innovation. So thank you very much. That concludes my presentation.